victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Pedicini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, and joining me to break down a long weekend of action in the Jersey Flegg New South Wales Cup and, of course, the NRL is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, it is the Easter long weekend. We were recording on Good Friday. I've just been out to visit my grandma and say hello to her, and then I've come back to get this tip sheet recorded. I know what you've been up to, mate, but it is good to see your face, good to chat football. And as always, how you doing?
Yeah, good, mate, good. Yeah, quiet day so far. Hope everyone's enjoying the start of their Easter break, and a special shout out to people who celebrate Easter. If you haven't had the chance, Chris Ricketts has had a little bit of fun with the
Yes,
Ten Commandments.
good post, yep.
The Ten Commandments of being a rugby league fan, with a bit of a Parramatta bias on it, of course. One of the more interesting ones that he didn't include as a commandment was about you have to follow your man's team. Now, obviously, there might be some women out there who say you have to follow your woman's team. I would just simply say that no matter which of the partners follows Parramatta, that's the way you have to go. So we'll keep it simple with that. John, I went for a bit of a drive this morning, late morning, just to have a bit of a stroll around Kellyville Park with all the fencing that's now down. And it's an open park area up there. You can stroll right around the Eels Centre of Excellence and Grandstand. And I've taken some videos, so we'll probably pop that up on the socials and also on YouTube at some point later today. Apart from that, just it was such a lovely day. Just had to get out in the sun and enjoy.
It is a gorgeous day out there, yeah, and certainly nice to make some use of it, although we are now cooped back up in our houses chatting about football, but not a bad place to be, honestly, even if the Parramatta Eels make us sweat for it every now and then. And it's maybe it's going to be a profitable long weekend with Mitchell Moses back for the Parramatta Eels, and we'll get to that shortly, mate. But before we talk any more football, as always, got a few little housekeeping bits to do, including a shout out to the sponsors of both the Tip Sheet and TCT. And of course, that's Parramatta Leagues Club, home of the Parramatta Eels, wonderful supporters of the junior district in particular, which we spoke about in our last podcast in our big preview of the free junior rep finals there, 60s. And then, of course, our other partners in Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, who have been with us from essentially day dot, and Greg and the crew have always been incredible supporters of everything that we do here on TCT and the Tip Sheet. So much love to both our sponsors there. Of course, no matter which platform you're giving us a listen or a watch on, a like and a subscribe goes a long way for our algorithms and metrics. And 60s, anything else you want to shout out before we get ahead of this one?
No, but I do have an interesting fact before we get into all the three previews. That is, this Monday, the Eels are in the home dressing sheds at Combank Stadium. Interestingly enough, they are always in the the away dressing sheds.
Is that just a right afforded to them as the home team at Combank? Like not home team, but the home team, if you know what I mean, with inflection?
So apparently the decision was made some time ago, because the dressing sheds are the same. There is still a home and away dressing shed that has been nominated, that Parramatta opted for the away dressing shed, which means they never have to change the sheds. So they get to be in the same sheds.
I mean, that makes sense from a Parramatta perspective. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So that's just an interesting tidbit, and I believe that's always been the case there. So I hadn't ever seen that around anywhere, and was informed of that during the week. And it's I think it's quite an interesting bit of trivia there in terms of Parramatta and rugby league. So no, mate, I'm I'm ready to rip in. Just a reminder, however, if anyone didn't watch our junior preview as yet, and of course I'll question why you didn't watch our junior reps preview, but apart from when you present your excuse note, I do want you to know that the venue has changed for the matches tomorrow.
Good shout.
And it's we mentioned that in that podcast. As I said, it was set down for a major venue in Rooty Hill, but it's now been moved to the Parker Street Reserve in Penrith. We had our say on that sort of move and the venue yesterday in the Junior Reps preview podcast. But anyway, that's there. If you're going to the game, that's where you're going to have to head to. So, but of course, apart from that, you can be following the live blog on TCT, or you can be watching the live stream on Bar Sports TV. They're good people there, and gave us a shout out on their finals call last week at Leichhardt Oval. So
also a couple of TCT shout outs on Fox last night in the Dragons Manly clash.
The Cumberland Throw.
Yeah, the Cumberland Throw got it run a couple of times there.
It's good when you can name your side after a particular tackle.
An obscure tackle that pops up once every year or so. Or at least how the commentators deliver their commentary in the game. So
we get a sound grab every so often.
But yeah, within 5 minutes of the second half last night, we had I suppose a dubious tackle that resulted in a minor injury that was dubbed the Cumberland Throw. So you take what you can get when it comes to free PR 60s. All right,
absolutely.
mate. And speaking of the Cumberland Throw, let's get to our famous TCT preview, starting with the Jersey Flegg. Unfortunately, even though it's a triple header for the Eels and the Tigers this week, with the Tigers holding the home field advantage in all three grades, nothing lines up. It's a real shame. There is a double header on Monday that is at different venues, so that doesn't line up. And then the Flegg are being relegated to action on Saturday at 12 o'clock p.m. out at Lidcombe Oval. And this is a shared home ground for both teams, which is obviously funny given the shared CommBank facilities right now. But Eels have played plenty of home games at Lidcombe the last few years, including this season. But now the West Tigers have the home field advantage. They come into this round in 7th against Parramatta's 3rd on the ladder. And the Eels, coming off a absolute thumping of the Canberra Raiders last week, look like this. They do have some changes. At fullback, Arpa Twiddle comes back to the grade in a big boost for the team. He'll start at fullback, obviously. On the wings, you got Moe Alamadine and Bradley Avery on the left and right, respectively. Tavaka Palu will run the right edge with Avery, with Richard Penasini down the left alongside Moe. And then in the halves, Matthew Hunter and now Josh Lynn. Josh Lynn wasn't named originally 60s, but he's been updated into the team list or match centre now. So Cooper drops out and Lynn comes in here. And then you've got in the front row, Damascus Nemia, Jack Hudson and Tianka Brown, first choice back row there. On the first choice front row, I was getting the back row ahead of myself there because Dom Destratus, Tyrese Lakenny and Seb Piacala are your starting back rowers. Dom and Tyrese have been pretty much the first picked edge back row players all season, while Seb Piacala has done a tremendous job coming into the team in the absence of Saxon Pryke and has really carved out a niche in that roster. Going to the bench now, you got Paddy Spence, Raf Destratus, Lennox Rosati making his club debut for the Parramatta Eels, and then Ieti Samuelo rounding out the rotation. Extend the roster, Jaden Ambici and Antioch Vitala Mariner, a couple of outside backs there, giving the Eels options for both concussion and pre-game sort of roster manipulation. So Eels looking very sharp here, 60s. Like I said, a couple of changes, but they were, if anything, positive changes by virtue of players being made available from higher grades or just returning in general. So really, really good looking team here, taking on the West Tigers, who did pip them in the game out at Cabra round 3. Was it round 3, 60s?
Round 2.
Round 2, yeah, there we go. And they had the West Tigers in that game, but then got run down. So hopefully revenge is on the menu here. But since then, the Eels have played really good football. They've definitely found a gear. They've gotten players back into the fold, like Richard Penasini coming back from that rib injury. Arthur Twiddle obviously has been up at New South Wales Cup getting some good playing time there. He comes back in here. So it's a sharp team. What do you like about the Eels in this matchup, mate?
Well, first of all, should mention that particular day, and just as you might have seen that I was scrolling through something as you were speaking, and that was because I was thinking, what were the circumstances of that loss earlier this season in round 2? Because I did see the Eels play the West Tigers in a trial game, and there were a few that was out at Lidcombe, and there was a few injuries in that one from memory, and the Tigers had a late rally in that one, but the Eels just got home with the win in that. But I didn't pay too much attention to that because of the fact that there were so much chopping and changing, and I think from memory the Eels might have had a whole lot of forwards playing in the back line by the end of the game. So it was a bit of a surprise to me when we lost that game and in round 2. And the thing was, it was 3 late tries. Like the Eels were leading something like, 22-10 or something like that. And then within the last 15 minutes of the game, 3 tries, 2 of them converted, and it ended up being 26-22 to the West Tigers. And, when you think a team defends well for 55 minutes and builds that sort of lead and then falls in the last 15, it has to be incredibly frustrating. But, of course, since then, the Eels have been very, very consistent in their football. And I guess when they're preparing for this game, they're going to be focused because of the fact that they did lose the last time they played the Tigers, but they're also going to be buoyed by the fact that they've struck some really good form since then. So I guess they certainly won't be ahead of themselves in thinking they can get this done. They're ahead of the Tigers on the table, but only just by the 1 point.
Eels do have a game in hand as well that is worth considering there too.
Yes, they do.
The postponed game against the Seagulls, which will obviously influence their ladder seeding in some capacity when they finally get to make up that game. I presume in the coming weeks, because the Flegg do have a global bye that is offset against their 2 senior competitions in the Cup and the NRL.
Yeah, so the Eels currently sit in 3rd place, even though they've got that game in hand. So that's how well they're travelling. The Storm actually sit on top in the Jersey Flegg.
Very, very surprising. They've consistently been not also around 60s. They've been better in recent seasons, but they have not been a top team in this competition in recent years. So they've definitely got something cooking up or down there in Melbourne, but up there at the top of the table, I guess.
Yeah. So they haven't lost a game as yet.
What does stand out to me, and I wrote about this in my team list post, I think 60s, or maybe no, it was my Monday wrap, was even accounting for that missing game and sort of forecasting the same per game result, Eels comfortably have the best defense in the competition right now. They've conceded 60 points across their 5 games, so that's 12 points a game. So even projecting another 12 points at 72 points total, next best is 104, and it starts scaling up pretty fast from there. So their defense is setting the tone for their wins.
Which flies in the face of them conceding 16 points in 15 minutes.
And that is the outlier game. It really is that West Tigers game. So they're going to want revenge for this one. And yeah, the roster's certainly right there. This is as good a team as they've put in the park all season. They've got guys coming back from higher grades in ARPA. They've got Josh Lynn getting a bit of consistency. Lynn's form has been great, but he's been bouncing up and down between Cup and Flegg level. Richard Penasini finally is looking like he's back to his best after a really unfortunate rib injury in round 1, which put him well behind the 8 ball. And last week he was awesome. So really good signs there. The forward pack's fantastic. Nemir and Brown have been great bookends to Jack Hudson at dummy half. Dom Lestratus is a very underrated back row of 60s. Great nuance. In a way, and you don't want to make player comps because even when you're trying to be instructional and educational just to give fans an idea, some people will latch on to, well, you said he's like this player. How come he's not like this player? There's a little bit of Britton Nakora to the way Dom Lestratus runs his lines. He is a very savvy line runner. He finds the soft spot in the front line consistently, which is why he's so productive as a try-scoring back rower. And his combination with Matt Hunter has been tremendous this year. So really keen to see that flourish on the weekend. Obviously,
John, we should also point out that Dom and his twin Raf, they're not the same sort of build as
Nakora?
Nakora. I just was having a horrible mental blank there.
That's okay.
Yeah, Britton Nakora. Yeah, completely different build, but as you said, the lines that are run.
It's the nuance in the line and the angles, exactly,
Yeah.
and the timing. And Nakora is the best in the NRL at it. And I'm not saying that Dom and Raf as well are going to be like Britain in that regard, but that's what like when I watch them play, and Dom in particular because he gets more opportunities as a starting back rower. That's really what stands out to me, and the fact that both of them are 1% players. They will do their kick chases. They will, scramble after the loose ball. They've always been fantastic in that regard. But then, in the other side of the back row, Tyrese has been great this year. Got a taste of New South Wales Cup, and Seb Piakala, given that opportunity by both Lakini and Pryke being up in the Cup a couple of games ago, he seized it with both hands. So really good things happening in the Flegg 60s, and we get accused of being too optimistic and overselling some of these players at times, but we can only report on what we're seeing. They're playing great football. And I'm not telling you that there's 17 first graders in the wings here, but this is a team that could be spitting out a few serious first grade prospects just by the nature of how competitive these guys are. So maybe it's at Parramatta, maybe it's elsewhere.
John, at worst, there are players here who are going to be good depth players for the Eels.
They're going to be the core of your Cup team. They're going to be fringe first graders at worst, and that is a great place to be for both the player and the club.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you've got that balance there, and you've got players there that have played a bit of Cup football. Arpa's played
got a couple of games under his belt now. Yep, Moe got some last year.
Yep. Richie
technically played, but unfortunately was concussed straight away.
But did get the NRL trial under his belt.
I believe Matty Hunter got a couple of games, no?
No, last year. Yeah. Josh Lynn, as we know.
Yep.
We had Tiankum had he got a game in the trial.
Correct.
For NRL.
Tyrese has been up there.
Yep.
Has Dom been up there last year when they were promoting players?
I don't think he had, but I think but Paddy Spence did.
Paddy Spence did up there. You're right. Yep. So I mean that is even though individually it's only a game here and there, they know what it takes now at the next level and what's going to be asked of them to play senior football, and it is more demanding going up to that grade because you've got NRL experienced NRL caliber players for whatever reason, whether it's form, coming back from injury, just being depth in that grade going to challenge you. And B, it's true of any, whether it's rugby union, rugby league, AFL, whatever. When you go up to senior football, proper senior football, they know all the little shortcuts, all the little, I'd say cheap shots and niggles and whatnot. And the game just becomes that much harder because of it. So the fact that a lot of these players have gotten a slice of that probably speaks to where the team is in the Flegg for a good reason.
Yeah, just more experience with gamesmanship.
Exactly.
So, John, we'd like to think that you had a minor aberration late in the game against the West Tigers before, without taking anything away from them. But the respective forms since then would have to validate that as a statement. Consequently, I think the Eels can get their job done in this particular game. So I'm tipping an Eels win in this one. If they, I guess we've said this before about the junior reps, it would be that they would beat themselves in this. It would be the only way that I see them falling in this particular game. And that's not taking anything away from the West Tigers, but I guess it's more of a reference that when we've seen losses, it's basically come where the team has undone their own good work, say earlier in the game or at different points in the game with some poorly timed errors or, just all of a sudden losing their way in a game. So maybe that's just straightforward rugby league that, if you're making those sorts of errors, you're opening the door to your opponent. So anyone that's making errors is really beating themselves. And that's probably what, as I said, the team has to guard against, is beating themselves, because they're going to be a match for the Tigers and more. and I do expect them to win. And I expect them to maybe to get a lead and go on with the job in this one.
I would like to see that 60s. Obviously, last week they went on with the job. They demolished Canberra. But I think they've got the talent and the coaching in this team that they can start really putting their opposition in constrictor holds heading forwards. And there are a number of players, and we mentioned that New South Wales Cup experience. There are a number of players now vying for playing time up in the Cup for the rest of the year. And we're talking, obviously, Arpa and Lynn have been there, done that in the back line. But Moe Alamadine, Richard Penasini, Bradley Avery, they all could be featuring in the Cup, depending on configurations up there. Obviously, Lynn, Hunter too. And pretty much that entire pack, 60s. Nemia, Hudson, Brown, Destratus, Dom starting there, Lakini, and even Seb Piocala. There's no reason why they can't be pushing into the New South Wales Cup with strong performances. So a lot to be played for here for our boys, both on the Flegg level and beyond. And I agree with you. I want to see them win and win well here. I wouldn't say exercise the demons, but right the wrongs of that round 2 clash and don't fade in the final quarter. And consolidate your position inside the top 4 and maybe even higher. Yeah,
the other thing too, and I just want to point out, I think it's a measure of the strength of the team that Antioch Faitola Mariner can't get
exactly
a start
outside
in the back line.
Yep.
Yeah. But the other thing I'll point out as well is that we know there is going to be at least one late change because of Joe. Well, we're expecting there might be a late change because of Joe Offengowi's departure to the Super League, which means there is a spot.
They could just bring back Kane Kalach or Brock Parker.
I was going to say that's the only. It's possible that spot gets filled by someone coming through from Ron Massey Cup like Kane Kalach, but we'll see. So if we get a change to the team, it's not unexpected. We'll be keeping an eye out for that, but. This will be a game that we're going to try and cover with John and I. Will do a bit of tag on the live stream on Saturday.
Yep.
And whilst I'll bring you the Tarsha Gale Cup live from Penrith, John will look at covering the Jersey Flegg match. So now, John, we move on to the knock-on effect match, which is, I guess, in a way, a curtain raiser to the NRL. It's just that it's not at the same ground on Sunday.
Absolutely baffling. Why play it on a Monday if you're not going to line it up with the first grade game? I don't know. See, it actually hurts my head. Like, what? Just play them on a Saturday or a Sunday and let them go about their lives normally. Because bearing in mind that while there are top 30 contracted players and development contracted players in these teams, there are also blokes that are working a normal gig Monday to Friday. And I know it's a long weekend, but let them have the Monday off then. Come on. Anyway, so this game sees the 4th place Parramatta Eels, who sport a 3-win, 1-draw, 1-loss, 1-bye record, taking on the Western Suburbs Magpies, who come into this game second last in 12th, having played 6 games for 2 wins and 4 losses. And they have the second worst for and against in the competition, so no surprises there. And relative to being second last, having the second worst for and against, but the Eels and the Tigers, let's go through the Eels lineup, and we'll mention key players for the Tigers, I guess. But at fullback, Magpies, Mag Tigers, Tick Pies, whatever. Yes, they are the Magpies in this grade, as the brand split there. The smallest of nods given to the other part of the joint venture, I guess. In the Magpies,
rather than just a little magpie on the shoulder.
Yeah. We got Joash Papawi moving back to his, I'll say, preferred position of fullback 60s. He's spent some decent time in the halves and done a pretty good job there, but with the changes in the roster this week, he now goes back to his number 1. On the left wing, you got Alfred Smalley, who's done a pretty good job for the Parramatta Eels, honestly. I think he came across from Manly 60s and has been a pretty handy pickup, providing some quality depth in the back line. Hayes Dunster, who's been in good form on that right wing, will reprise his role down that sideline. It's a young centre pairing of Araz Nanva and Jordan Samrani. And obviously Jordan's done some great things in the NRL, while Araz is doing a good job in Cup, which is nice to see. Then you got Ronald Volkman moving from halfback to 5'8" this week to make way for Dean Hawkins rejoining this team, because of course there is a big change in the NRL, which we'll get to shortly. In the front row, Plenty of experience here. Ryan Madison, Brendan Hands, and still named but not expected to play, Joe Ofengahi. And we do expect that to change before kickoff. So Madison will partner, presumably Wiramu Greg or Tony Matayeli, and the Eels will bring in, I assume, Kane Kalachi or Brock Parker. But right now, Joe named. And more experience in the back row. Shaun Lane on the left, Bryce Cartwright on the right, I believe. Dan Keir at lock forward. Then on the interchange, Cruz Natili-Schmidt, Saxon Pryke, Wiramu Greg, and Tony Matayeli. As we alluded to, we expect one of Wiramu or Tony to push into the starting front row, although Saxon Pryke has started too, so that's a consideration as well. And then most likely we'd see one of, pending their fitness or availability due to suspension, which we're not sure, Parker or Kalache, to come into this team.
Yeah, and John, this is again a case where the Eels have faced the Magpies earlier this year in that same round where it all lined up to be playing the Tigers/Magpies across all the grades. The Eels played the Tigers, I think from memory, at Ringrose Park.
Correct. 20-10 victors.
And won 20-10. And it was actually a decent standard of cup football that week. And and also from memory, I think Joash had a really strong game. Hayes Dunster
had a great game. Yeah,
basically had a cracking game.
230
really,
meters, yeah.
Announced that he was back from so many injuries that he's had in recent times, and he had a pretty fair game last week as well. Scored a couple of tries last week.
It does make you wonder what he's been playing for in the last couple of years, doesn't it? Seeing Hayes now sort of getting back to what we saw pre-hip drop injury, and just the bad luck that's dogged him ever since. So it's good to see Hayes getting back to full flight. He's been very good this year.
Yeah. So he still had the odd niggle.
That's what I'm saying. He just had tremendous bad luck consistently in that recovery with just niggles here, injuries there. And yeah, I think for the first time since that hip drop from Tyrell Fulmayano, that he is back to something that resembles 100% or near enough.
John, up until, of course, the withdrawal of Joe Ofengawi due to his departure to England, I'm struggling to think of the last time I saw a New South Wales Cup pack that.
Well, it was probably the Parramatta Eels pack a couple of weeks ago, which was slightly less experienced because of no Joe, but still had plenty of experience. But yeah, throwing in Lane, Ofengawi into the mix this week. But yeah, Madison. So Ofengawi, had 200 games, and again, he's probably not playing. In fact, I'm quite confident.
He's not playing. He's gone. Yeah.
But like you said on paper, 200 games. Madison must be up near that point now. Bryce Cartwright's got easily over 100 in the bank. Shaun Lane's got over 100 in the bank. Wiramu's got a few seasons worth there, so he must be at 50. So that is a lot of experience in a cup team, and we've spoken about it. It is an unfortunate reflection of some of these players struggling. Some of these players maybe not fully buying into what Jason Riles has put on the table as his vision. Some combination in between there, and maybe some other factors too. Some guys are being dinged up. Some guys just had some bad luck. But it does reflect some of the greater issues the Eels have had with their senior players this year.
Yeah, it's whether it's that they haven't bought in or whether it's just he doesn't see the type of football that they play fits in with the type of
with the
football
vision
that he wants to.
Exactly, the profile of team that he wants, which every indication has been the Eels are going to be lighter and faster and more mobile, and there are some big boys in this pack.
Yeah, and the other sign of that is that Dan Keir, who's down to be the lock and captain of this team, one of the lesser experienced in terms of NRL games in this team, has been the one that's been constantly on the fringe of first grade selection. We know he's played a game, but he's been either named in the 17 and not played, or he's been the fresh reserve or sitting on that extended list on a consistent basis. So that almost telegraphs that he's higher in the pecking order than some of the well-established stars. So it's definitely changing times there with the Eels. And we're expecting that the rest of this season, right up till the conclusion of the season, there's going to be continued change. it's quite obvious that if you've got players who are well remunerated within the club, and Jason Riles is not selecting them on a regular basis, that it's not ideal to have such cap money running around in New South Wales Cup. So, yeah, it's a pretty strong pointer that he has more changes in store.
The key date will be round 11 for those changes, I think, 60s. Once that second tier sort of floodgate opens up and he can freely use other young players. Obviously, Jordan Samrani will be right at the front of that queue, but hopefully once he's back from injury, Will Latu and a couple others as well. I agree. I think we're going to see a real revolution in the roster in the back half of this season.
Yes. Now, for anyone that gets out to Lidcombe Oval, of course, look, I mean, they've got some strike weapons in this team. Heath Mason is as fast a player as you'd see in the, he's in that the same category really as the South fullback. What's his name again?
I'm having
leading the Dally M.
Yes. Gosh, I'm having a brain fade. I can see him in his little headgear. Where is South Sydney?
Gray?
Gray, yeah, Jai Gray. You got
Gray,
Tuapiki, Keanu Keeney, obviously Reece Walsh too. He's a bit bigger than the others, but similar. Those little pocket rocket fullbacks. You've seen a shift in the game, haven't you? From to back to those little live wire fullbacks. And Heath Mason, unfortunately, he's stuck behind Dream Buller, but he's a pretty handy young fullback. And yeah, that team has a lot of that SG Ball squad that won the premiership a few years ago.
It's also got a couple of familiar Parramatta names.
Yeah, there are a familiar.
Him and Charlie Murray.
Correct. Yeah, a couple of back rows that spent a good amount of time in our pathways. There's also a very prominent name in the halves, which I'll let you get to in a second, 60s. But
yes.
Look, speaking about those SG Ball players, Mason, one of them. I think Tui Tupou was as well, but I know that Kit Laulili was one of them. Tony Suka was definitely one of them. So they've got quite a few of those players between first grade and here starting to filter through from that SG Ball team a few years back. And again, that's something that the Eels are starting to do as well, having those young players become the core of that reserve grade team. And then whether they kick on to be, full-time first graders or fringe first graders, it gives the club and the players a real sound basis of knowing the systems and knowing how to step up.
Yeah. So people who decide to go out to Lidcombe, of course, get the opportunity to see Lachlan Galvin in action. Obviously, he's been famously relegated to New South Wales Cup this weekend by Benji Marshall. I'm absolutely certain that he will be busting his ass to prove a point.
Yeah, unfortunately, he might wear his RAF because he's too good for the NRL. I dread to think what he can do in the New South Wales Cup, even though the Eels have a handy team.
Yeah, so he's obviously the player that the Eels have to spot in terms of putting pressure on him when the Magpies are in possession, really making him build up that tackle count as well to maybe minimise his effectiveness when the possession does come his way. You almost feel that you could identify the half and the 5'8" as being the greatest threat that the Magpies will pose in this game, and that's not taking away from other players, but it's definitely going to be the case. The pack pretty workmanlike, you would suggest. The Eels, on paper alone, the Eels should absolutely dominate in the battle in the middle. Should. We saw them last week. Just their execution in the first half was sublime last week. And then we had the polar opposite in the second half where it looked like they were doing their best to lose an unlosable game. But they certainly took up the challenge with both hands. It was an extraordinary second half, extraordinary, but not in a good way. I do expect the Eels should be able to get it, but get this one, but I issue great caution with tipping against a team with both Mason and Galvin as such strike weapons in the Magpies team. So I'll tip the Eels, as I said, but with that sense of caution about the tip.
Yeah, I'm very much concerned about the Galvin factor. I feel like the Eels need to be ruthless here. They need to press an advantage and not take the foot off the gas in order to minimise Galvin's ability to influence this result. Because if they keep it close, he is the sort of player who's just going to find a way to win the game. And
Yep.
I think that's the reality of this game is either the Eels win and win well, or they will be beaten by a piece of Galvin and Mason brilliance in a close game.
Yep, have to agree there. Okay, John, that brings us to the main event.
Yes, sir. And
NRL.
Excuse me, got a bit of a scratchy throat. The classic Easter Monday fixture now between the Parramatta Eels and the West Tigers. And this one is a home game for the West Tigers being played out of CommBank. And the Tigers come into this game. I can't make fun of the Tigers given that we are posted in 17th and last, but the Tigers in 9th place coming into this week. So let the memes run free, I guess. But the West Tigers playing decent football, 3-3 on the season. Parramatta 1-5, although having squandered a couple of real opportunities to get some wins in those 5 losses. And we look at the two teams, starting with the Tigers for a 4 o'clock kickoff out at CommBank. Jareen Buller is the fullback for the joint venture. Sania Taruva and Luke Laulili are on the wings. Brent Naden, Stafford Toa as part of a bit of a revamped or reshuffled backline, accounting for injuries and maybe suspension there. Jerome Luai will partner Adam Dewey or Duahi in the halves. Obviously no Lachlan Galvin. He's been relegated to reserve grade as part... Well, no, it wasn't a player vote now, 60s. The narrative has changed. It was a coach's decision only. That consulted the players, but it wasn't the players coming to the coach saying you cannot pick him, but who cares? It's now in the past. In the forward pack, you got Tyrell May and Fanua Pole as the bookends. Api Coruscant is a dummy half. Samuela Faianu and Alex Seyfarth are in the back row with Alex 12 a lock forward. On the interchange, Talon De Silva, pretty talented young dummy half, will be in the 14. Royce Hunt, Jack Bird and Sione Faianu round out their rotation players. And then the extended roster, plenty of players we just spoke about. Sukar, Mason, Kit Laulili, obviously Luke's brother there. Solomoni Fa'atapa, and then Tristan Hope. And before we get to the Eels 60s, Liam Kennedy, the main man in terms of refereeing, with Adam G in the box. That is not a full-strength Tigers outfit, 60s, but they do have a lot of their key players in place here. Buller, Luai, and Coruscant really stand out there. Obviously, May in the front row. So the Eels, they got done by the Tigers earlier, and we'll get to the Parramatta lineup very shortly. But yeah, I look at that Tigers lineup, and they're playing decent football, but they're definitely beatable.
They're winning games this year that they might have lost last year, and it's a combination of them having some good moments in the game and their opponents having shockers. No doubt they were able to turn around an early loss to Newcastle last week, for example, with a comfortable victory, but it was against a Knights team, which a lot of media commentators have said was laughably bad. And I mean, we think Parramatta's been bad, but I was listening to the broadcast over the radio as I was driving back from Leichhardt Oval watching junior reps last week, and I started off on trying to listen to the coverage on 2GB, and they were sort of making light of the game and what was happening, and there was a lot of conversation about things other than calling the game, and I thought, no, I can't listen to this because it's not really coverage. So I switched to the ABC, and of all things, they were doing the same thing. Like trying to find, if they weren't bemoaning and laughing at the Knights' performance, they were having conversations rather than calling the game. And I think that very much spoke to what that match was like. So the Tigers have had that modicum of success this year, as I said, not only, due to the fact that they have improved as a team, but I think they're nowhere near the type of team that maybe their supporters or some of their media friends might be making them out to be. I think they're a very average team, and it would only take a couple of players out to really have them in trouble. But by the same token, let me single out a couple of people. I think Stafford Toa has been a revelation this year in the back line. When he was first starting out with Newcastle, I think from memory,
Correct.
he looked like he was going to be a well above average player. And then I can't remember whether it was injuries or form or what have you, but he just seemed to disappear as a profiled player. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with how he's performing this year. And the first time we played the Tigers earlier this year, he made Will Penasini look really, really ordinary. He stood him up and ran round him a couple of times. So
that matchup won't happen this time, though, right? Because Will was on the left during that game, and has switched back to his preferred right. Yeah,
but it's still a case of he's a player that they do have to watch. We know how Jareem Buller is one of those players who can create something out of nothing. I'm now not so sure about Jerome Luai. After last season, which I thought he was absolutely outstanding for with Penrith, I don't know whether it's been the way he's gone about things around the Galvin situation, but I think he's got to that point where he's worrying about things other than the football. And I don't know what version of Jerome Luai we're going to get this week. I'm hoping it's that distracted version of him that won't pose too much of a threat to the team. But regardless, the Tigers really made us look ordinary that last time that we played them, because we were. It started off as a contest, and the Eels had so many opportunities in that opening 20, 25 minutes of the game, couldn't convert one. And then the Tigers opened theirs, with something that was not much more than a training run, which was, as we're talking about just then, Stafford Toa getting around Will Penasini. And we cannot afford for the Tigers to get any level of confidence in this game, because I think they're a team that can be pulled apart if you can get on top of them, just in terms of confidence, momentum, that sort of thing. You don't want to play them where they have got some sense of freedom to play just sort of a wilder.
I do agree. The one silver lining here comes in that big fallout from the Galvin situation. There is no doubt that he was the most dangerous player in their prospective field if they did get a roll on, because Galvin he pops up everywhere, starts breaking the line between his running game and the short passes and the short kicking. And that's not to say that Jerome Luai and Adam Dwyer and Dream Buller can't do that as well, and obviously Api Coruscant, who's a dynamic dummy half. But I do think that they are definitely weaker without Galvin in the team. So that is the Parramatta's gain this week. And speaking of the Eels 60s.
Yeah, let's run through the team there before we go too much into talking about the ins and outs of the teams.
Yes, and we did a nice job covering the Tigers there, so let's switch our focus to the blue and gold. Do have some changes this week, mostly positive, I would definitely argue, with Isaiah Yongi reprising his role at fullback. Josh Adokar will be on the left sideline with Bowie Simonson on the right. Partnering Bowie down that side is Will Penasini, while Sean Russell will work with the Fox down the left. Dylan Brown is still in his 5'8" role, but he'll be partnering a pretty familiar name there in Mitchell Moses. Good to have our talismanic halfback in the fold. This is a big 160s, and we'll talk about Mitch at length, I'm sure, shortly. But let's keep going, because there is another big inclusion from the injury ward. Jack Williams coming back ahead of the clock in a big boost for our front row stocks, and he'll partner Junior Barlaw in what should be, on paper, our best front row pairing, 60s. So that's a big one there for the Eels. Riley Smith, for the third time, has been named to start, and I'm knocking on wood for the young man, because I think he's due to actually get that proper start. And then in the back row, another change. Kelma Tuolangi has come into the team for Shaun Lane. Kelma has been I think sold in the recent week 60. Certainly not spectacular, but I think he's probably done enough on the back of the struggles in the NRL back row to warrant this change. On the other side, you got Gideon or Kitione Katonga, Jermaine Hopgood starting at lock forward. Then on the interchange, Dylan Walker and Luca Moretti in the 14 and 15. And then alongside them, Matt Dury and Sam Tuivasa. Those two forwards recalled this week after turning out in the Cup last week and playing pretty handy football. Then the extended roster, we've got Madison, Papali, Hawkins, Hands, and Sam Rani. And then that is pretty much all the Parramatta news there. Obviously, a couple of changes. Out is Charlie Gaimo, who is not present anywhere. And I don't know if you've got an update for me on that 160s, but he's not on the injury report. He's not in Cup, and he's not in the NRL. So I don't know if he's hurt or if he's
just a bit of a rest. Just a bit of a rest.
Could be a rest, I suppose.
Yep,
and then Joffa obviously out because he's left the club. And then Shaun Lane dropping down to New South Wales Cup is another big one there. So that is the crux of the changes there this week. And I suppose any and all discussion is going to be centred around that number 7.
Yes, John. I look at the team. I'm a lot happier about the appearance of the team this week. Reads well on paper. A couple of weeks ago when we were playing the Dragons, I was really confident that the Eels could get the win, or in fact would get the win. Dropped back a little bit last week because it was Darwin, and I just
we closed the book. Now it's burn it on that one, mate.
Yeah. So we move past that. But again, last week was probably me again returning to looking at ways in which a win was possible, rather than that week before against the Dragons, where I was looking at the Eels were going to win. How were they going to achieve that? This week, I'm leaning back towards how I felt about the game for the Dragons. I think this is a game that they can win. It's probably a game that they should win. Now, I was really buoyed last time by what I saw on the training track. Now, I can't speak to that this time, nor would I actually speak to it before the game anyway, but I haven't. It's been a bit of a changed around week. I haven't. I've seen one session, but it wasn't a really heavy session that I saw, so I can't really speak to how they looked in their preparation. What I can say is it's going to make a difference with Mitch Moses there on a number of levels. The first is communication is going to pick up massively, because he's a player that he's constantly barking and yapping through a game. He demands where he wants players to be. Like, there is no confusion at all about where his teammates should be, where his runners should be, the blokes beside him. Now, that will apply not only in attack but in defence. And if he's got Kelmer alongside him, then you're going to see the better version of Kelmer Tuilagi playing alongside Mitch Moses. We also know that Dylan Brown is a much better player when Mitch Moses is on the field, because his style of play complements rather than conflicts with Mitch Moses. And the other thing too is it unburdens him mentally from that stress of he has to be the main man. He doesn't have to be the main man. He can be the man who can be a little bit more ad lib this week. And that suits Dylan Brown far better. You look at then the extra threat that then comes on with Dylan Walker, because all of a sudden the Eels have got a different focal point if they need it. Next thing with Mitch Moses, the kicking game. You know you're going to get a better kicking game. And with respect to players who've been doing the kicking so far this year, obviously Dylan, but also Ronald Volkman and Dean Hawkins, Mitch Moses he's elite in the NRL with the kicking game. So the Eels gain another, asset out there on the field with Mitch's kicking game. So I think we're going to be better in attack. I think we're going to be better in defence by virtue of, as I said, I think he'll improve Kelmer beside him, which is really important on the edge.
So you're tipping a swapping of edges for Gideon?
Um,
He did play left against the Newcastle Knights, so there is precedent there.
I think from memory, going back to the pre-season, I'm pretty sure that Gideon was training on the left side during the pre-season, but I'm not sure how they're going to line up, and that's why I said if.
That there is definitely an operative there. I agree.
Yeah. John, there's on so many levels things change with Mitch Moses out there. However, he's not a one-man band.
He ain't going to be taking the hard carries around the middle and making those tackles.
Yeah. So all those things that I just spoke about, I said if he's playing beside Kelmer, then there's an opportunity that Kelmer can improve. So Kelmer's still the one that's got to do that work for a start. When I talked about his kicking game, the Eels players have to chase those kicks.
And that let them down in Darwin 100%.
Yeah, and when I talked about his communication, well, the players have to be following his instructions. So he can be the catalyst of an improved performance, but if the players around him don't perform as they're supposed to, it won't matter one iota. So massive inclusion for the Eels increases their potential for a win. I think it will give them the win, but it won't be the win will only come if the players do what they're supposed to do, the rest of the team. He's not a one-man band. He's an influential player, but he's not a one-man band. So where it will be interesting, John, this is the part that I'm interested in, is how much our attacking shapes will benefit from his presence there. How much, whether we'll see something more from Isaiah Iongi from Mitch's presence, because that's going to be the first time that we've seen them as a combination. It's a shame we're not seeing Zach Lomax out there.
No.
And seeing the double threat from those two together. But it will be interesting to see how Isaiah Iongi looks playing alongside Mitch Moses.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of phrasing the sort of impact that Mitch will have, but also what is going to be required of his teammates and his peers coming into this game. And there is no doubt that Mitch is one of the few players in this game that is both a floor and a ceiling raiser. They're very rare. A player that can elevate your baseline level of play as well as get more out of a team at the highest level. But he's going to need help. He's not a silver bullet. He's the closest thing the Eels are ever going to get to a silver bullet, to a panacea, to a cure-all solution, but he is not a complete one-man fixer. And yeah, there's no doubt that we're going to need more of the pack. I thought they were completely overrun by the Raiders last week. And yes, the Darwin conditions played a part, but so too the Parramatta's own. Look, I'll say inadequacies, 60s, but again, it is self-inflicted inadequacies. And yeah, Parramatta's roster isn't as strong as it could be. And yes, there are clearly some holes needed to fill, but the Eels are also doing a lot to get in their own way. And if they remedy that, they'll be able to really stick it to the Tigers. But if they don't, those players that we mentioned before, in the likes of Buller and Luai and Coruscant and Dewey as well, they will, try and pounce on the opportunities. So Mitch is going to need some help from his teammates. And like you, I know that Dylan's going to be a lot better for Mitchell being in the team, but I am really keen to see what Isaiah Iongi does. I think that Mitch's ability to straighten up that attack at speed is going to really open up some channels out wide for Isaiah, and I'm hoping that he can really take advantage of it. I'm hoping that there is a little bit of Melbourne Storm Cronk Slater going on with the kick opportunities, the short kicking game, the grubber kicks between those two, because Iongi's got that easy pace to sort of appear like he's offside from an onside position because he's timed the run really nicely, and I'm hoping that we've got that in play as well. But yeah, they're the little cherry on top things. I want to see the real big fundamental stuff, and that means strong contact from the middles. It means not being lazy at marker, which has been the bane of a few players this year, which is, again, if you're lazy at marker or getting back to marker in Api Coruscant's peripheral vision, he is going to kill you. So we can't afford that. We cannot afford that. But I do like the team composition. I think Jack Williams gives us another high motor, quality forward. And look, Jack's had a couple of defensive lapses this year, but he's not been Robinson Crusoe in that regard. And I think that Byron Hole has been a real net positive. It's probably where I'm trying to go with that one.
You're going to get some line speed.
Yeah, line speed, some aggressive defense,
yes.
And a guy that's going to rip into the defensive line with the ball in hand.
Yeah. John, one of the things that I do want to come back to with Mitch Moses is I'm not going to make unrealistic expectations. I've said about the differences that he can bring. I've talked about the role that other players have to play around him. They will get better because Mitch will also get better after this week. What you have to remember, and this is the time, I'm going to give you the rough of the timeline. So because Mitch was involved in the matches for Australia Pacific Championships at the end of last
deep into
season.
the off-season, yep.
Yeah, so it was December from memory when he returned. So he got a little bit of time before Christmas, but not a huge amount. Returned after Christmas, and then it was sort of like mid to late January when he aggravated the foot. Was then not involved when they started doing a little bit more serious scrimmage work. Missed out on the trials, was back involved in scrimmage work at training as in the week of the trial and then the week following the trial. So I had no doubt he was going to be ready for round one because he'd gone from doing all the rehab running that we could see out on the field into getting involved with the scrimmage work, and then unfortunately came off injured at the end of the week of training that was the week prior to round one. So that's how late it was that it really looked like a problem, and that's when he had all the extra scans. Then it showed the fracture around the metalwork that was in his foot. So he hasn't had a lot of time with those players. It's really the preparation has been a bit of last week and this week, but not too much last week. So this week's been a week really, and will be because they've still got preparations to do, but it'll be that week of familiarisation with Mitch calling the shots. There's a lot of new combinations around him as well as ones that existed before. I guess I'd be thinking that he'd play alongside Kelmer because they played alongside each other in the past, or at least they're familiar with each other. Gideon's a whole new player and combination that he'd be looking at on the other side. Doesn't mean they couldn't do it, but there are new players out there that he's not as familiar with. So anything that happens from here on, John, will be an improvement. But I think it'll be significant enough this week that they get the job done against the Tigers. As you correctly pointed out, one of their major attacking weapons in Lachlan Galvin, they've made the choice not to go with him because of the circumstances around this week. I'm very glad about that. By the same token, I respect Adam Dwahi as well.
Oh,
I think
he is a very handy player. Yeah,
he is a very, very handy player. He will continue to ask questions through the game. He's a far different type of halfback to what Lachlan Galvin is, but he has a lot of versatility about him, and he's got a lot of skills. So they're going to lose on Galvin, but they're maybe going to pick up different assets from Adam Dwahi. So I'm not taking the Tigers lightly in any way, but I think this is a very winnable game, and I think we'll do it. I think we'll do it on the base. Well, we have to minimise mistakes for a start. I think if we can minimise mistakes, I'd seen enough from the forwards that they could win that forward battle like they did against the Dragons. They did it for periods of time against the Bulldogs and Manly. but attack was letting them down as well. So, I think they can get it done, mate. So are we ready to fire in with the tips?
Yeah, let's go to predictions now. I think we've spoken enough of what needs to be said. I'm sure there's more in terms of individual matchups we could try and point out, but the reality is that just from a macro level, there are certain things that we've laid out that the Eels need to do, and if that is taken care of, I think those individual matchups sort of solve themselves this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll let you lead off, John.
Yeah, look, West Tigers, I think they are still favourites in this contest, even with the little bit of roster disruption they've got going on.
I think they've shortened, their odds have shortened a bit.
There you go.
Sorry, Parramatta's odds have shortened a bit.
I know the market fluctuated wildly after the Galvin stuff emerged earlier in the week. But I'm not surprised here the Eels have tightened up a little bit. I think that it's as much as the Galvin disruption is on the other side, that's the Moses effect on the blue and gold side. And I look to that, and look, if you're talking best on field, it is almost the storybook Hollywood sort of script, but it's got to be Mitchell Moses, right? I think that there are other players that are going to be a big factor if the Eels are going to win, but we know that this game is going to go through the hands and through the brain and eyes of Mitchell Moses. So I'm going to go the cheesy, easy option there for Mitchell Moses best on field. In terms of a solid 2IC for that award, maybe, look, talking about redemption, maybe Kelma Tuolungi. I think the Eels need some strike from their back row 60s. There's no two ways about it. They need someone to put their hands up in the back row. And I think Gideon Katonga is trying, but you're seeing a rookie back rower essentially a rookie back rower, that has had a lack of a really senior established half helping guide him around the team. And I think that one way or another, that gets a little bit better this week. But I look to Kilmer as maybe looking to be hungry in his return to first grade. First try scorer. We mentioned before, if anyone's going to unlock Azara Young, it'll be Mitchell Moses. So I'll go for the fullback. And then the end score, I would love a big win, but I don't think we're going to get a big win. Even with Mitch back at the helm. I will go 22-16.
Okay, and I think you've probably come up with some selections that people would be nodding along with, John. I think that
I played it safe. Yeah, I played it very safe this week.
Well, no, I think you played it logically, most definitely. So, I'm so tempted also to go with Mitch Moses as the likely best on field. But you know what? I'll go for a redemption story in a different way. I'm going to pick Junior Paulo because Junior had an unbelievable game against the Dragons, and then, like all of our forwards, really struggled up there in the conditions in Darwin. I think he'd be stinging after that game. He copped some criticism for it. He's a far better player than that. I think this will, being a home game, being a game at Combank Stadium, he'll be looking to lift on what happened last week. So I'll tip him for my best on field. First try scorer, this is where I'm going to go for Mitch Moses. A dummy and run and a try for Mitch Moses. And as for the score, 32-14 to the Eels.
Oh, I like that. I would take an 18-point win right now. Yes. And look, again, we're making these predictions acknowledging that the Tigers are still favourites. And they're going to be... It's going to be very interesting to gauge the Tigers in this 160 because I think there's going to be a lot of emotion and sort of fired up efforts early on. And if the Eels can navigate and nullify that, I think the game will open up. So going to be very interesting to see how that first 10-15 minutes plays out and if the Eels can keep a lid on the contest, which has sometimes been their bane this year. But I hope with the return of Moses and the return of Jack Williams into the sort of core positions there at halfback and prop, that the Eels can do enough to, like I said, stay on top of things and then consolidate from there to open the game up.
I think there's more points in us than there was in that
I think
scored in the last minute.
Let me put it this way too. If we have the same opportunities afforded to us in the opening 20 minutes as we did in round 2 against the Tigers, with Mitchell Moses back in the team, I would expect the Eels to come away with 2 or 3 tries. So let's hope that there's a similar sequence of play for the Parramatta Eels, and with Mitch in the box seat there, they can actually put some points on the board.
Good call, mate. So that brings us to the end of our preview. Thank you to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Shout out to Greg. I caught up with Greg in a bit of a chat over the phone yesterday, 40. So he's flat out with the real estate business that it's a great service across 3 agencies there at Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. So I guess if you're looking to sell or buy, whatever the case may be, and you're in those areas, get onto a man that's an absolutely dedicated Parramatta Eels supporter and a great supporter of the Cumberland Throw. Thank you as well to the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. Don't forget, tomorrow might be an away game, in inverted commas, but it's there at Combank Stadium. And whether it's a home game or an away game, it is the home of the Eels for a reason. You can get into Sturlo's, see all the action up on the big screens, enjoy a drink, grab a feed in there, and just be part of the atmosphere around other Eels fans. Then home games or games at the stadium, get over to the stadium just before kick-off and enjoy the footy live. So, again, thank you to those, to our partners there. Thank you to, of course, our listeners, our viewers. We really appreciate the feedback that you give us. We'll be back with our instant reaction, of course, after the main game on Monday. But don't forget, in the meantime, that we've got the junior reps blog coverage. We've got lower grades blog coverage. There's always content of some sort on the Cumberland Throw. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.